Welcome back, everyone, to a new Bezan podcast. My name's Arya Alaverdi. I'm joined by Sina Soimion and somebody who's been on the podcast before, Sand Salari. Sina, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Arya. I'm good. It's good to speak to you, and of course, it's great to have Sand on the show as well.
Yeah, good to be on. Thank you, Arya.
Okay. So basically, this podcast is going to be based around the Iran-Iraq game that took place in Jordan, in Amman, on Thursday. World Cup qualifying match, last game of 2019 for the national team. The match ended for 2-1 defeat to Iraq, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of backlash after that game. A lot of people who are criticising Wilmots for the way that we played, and specifically the captain of the national team, Master Choudhury, has obviously been getting a lot of criticism over the last year, I'd say. And in this game, it kind of extenuated that level of criticism on him. But first of all, I want to speak about the squad that Wilmots put out. Before that, though, we need to discuss how his late arrival in Iran may have impacted the players, because he arrived 4 days late for the training camp, because he was refusing to undergo the training camp until he got paid by the Iranian Federation, and as a result, the training camp started quite late. And how do you think that impacted the camp in general then?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I think especially for a new manager who's still trying to get to know the players, not just the players who were there, but also maybe his coaching staff and so on. So it's very unprofessional. It's really disappointing. And one thing that actually really frustrated me more than him individually turning up late is that the fact that even his assistants weren't present in Iran prior to him turning up. Kairoush has had issues with the federation as well in terms of getting paid. But Oceano Cruz, Makar Agajanian, Alexander Lopez as well, they were always in Iran. I'd say a month before each training camp to observe the players domestically, but also prepare the training camps as well for Kairoush's arrival. That wasn't the case this time. From what I've heard, all his assistants refused to come to Iran as well until they were paid, which is, look, it's an issue that we have to deal with. It's not something new. But I think in anticipation, FA could have dealt with it better, and Wilmots definitely should have dealt with it better as well, rather than just leaving everyone in kind of limbo, a week to 10 days before the actual game. And as we discussed in previous episode as well, it was always going to be a very important game considering the result in the last game. So that was with his late arrival. The squad itself, of course, there's disappointments, I think, in hindsight, and of course, considering how the game went, I think players like Jahanbakhsh, who are playing for a Premier League club, it's fair enough that he hasn't had a minute so far this season. It's really disappointing, but there is no question that in terms of the level of football, he's a lot higher than, I'd say, majority of the squad, and I would have been keen to see how he gets on the Wilmots, but we haven't had that much of a chance to see that. It's a similar case with Ezatollah as well. I think considering Haj Safi's injury and the fact that we were really short in midfield, I think he should have invited Ezatollah. Again, even if he's not going to play, if he's not going to be involved in the game itself, as a manager, you're still going to get to see your key players until they are actually match fit. So I think that's one of the things that really disappointed me. I know you're going to talk about Choudhury and Amiri. I don't really have much of a problem with them being invited, again, considering that the options, we were short in options. I know we discussed prior to recording about Mehrdad Mohammadi and so on. But even on the Kairoush, Choudhury was invited, I think on a kind of a squad-to-squad basis. He was almost always there. So I don't have a problem with him being there. I think the role that he was given was incorrect. And again, the criticism Shojoi's been getting is almost embarrassing, but I'm sure we'll get to it later on.
So Sahan, because obviously, we know that, like Sina was saying, specifically Masood Shojai, just because obviously Sina's brought it up now, we can kind of go into that topic quite quickly, because, he's been the captain of the national team for a number of years now. I think he's basically the guy who took over after Nick Wunam. And specifically for him to be criticised that heavily in a game like this. Now, you have to understand this as well. Shojai doesn't start games for Iran very often. The last game that he started was against, I think it was against Morocco in the World Cup. I don't think he started any other games after that, even in the Asian Cup. He has basically been a bench player for Iran. And, and even for his club in Iran, Tiraktor, he is playing, but he's not always starting for them. So he's kind of not really getting a lot of game time, even at club level. He's subbed off around the 70th minute or so, and so on. But in this game, he played about 80 minutes. And then he got sent off. Sand, what do you think about that in terms of him starting the game, playing 18, or probably would have played 90 minutes if he, not got sent off? How do we see this captain, progressing?
I think that in general, when we talk about Shojai, we're talking about a player who's been part of the national team setup for, something over 15 years, I think. Close to 15 years at least. Which is a really long time for any player, I think, to be a part of a national team setup. And I think we know that Shojai is there primarily for bringing experience and some leadership to the team. And I know he is kind of has a good status amongst the players as a kind of, at least off the field, as a leader. But, I mean, as you mentioned, he hasn't played since the Morocco game, and I was there in the stadium that day in St. Petersburg, and I think it's fair to say it was like an unmitigated disaster. I mean, he was on the field for about 60 minutes and was late to most loose balls, making bad fouls, and not really adding anything offensively, giving a lot of turnovers, and Queiroz pretty quickly subbed him out, and he didn't, as you said, appear for months after that. So I think the decision of Wilmots to start him, I think, was in part because we were in a high stress situation, in a high stress, place, obviously in Jordan, but there's a lot of Iraqi fans there. And I think he thought that Masood could bring a level of experience and calm to the team. But it's pretty clear that I think when a player is physically, if you just look at him physically as a player, is incapable of keeping up at that sort of speed, and if you just look at his in the game, how many loose balls he was late to, how many 50-50s he was late to, that sort of stuff, just from a technical performance point of view, before we even get into discussing the his handling of his emotions and stuff like that, was definitely lacking. And even if you look at Shojai in his peak years in Team Medley, and in general as a player, he's never been a player who, under high pressure in the midfield, is able to really show himself, especially, when the other team is physical. He often gets marginalized, and that's just been a feature of his play, forever, really. And so it's not like something that just developed. It's always been the case with him. So I personally think it was kind of a shock to select him to start such a crucial game, given, the physical limitations and the technical limitations that I think he has. And, that's just not talking about the kind of mental component, which I think we're going to get into.
I think Shojai is a good player. Technically, he's a good player. If you're going to speak about him, if he was put in a futsal match, for example, he'd probably be unbelievable because he has that technical ability. If he against Esteghlal. I think it was a week before the game or 2 weeks before the game. He gave an unbelievable assist to Sasan Ansari. Like, he just came on like about the 70th minute or whatever and lobbed the ball over the top for Ansari, who just headed it in. But it was like an unbelievable ball. And he has that sort of killer pass ability. But like you're saying, San, in this game against Iraq, these players are playing with an intensity that they want to beat Iran. You know, they want to beat Iran, and you know, they're not going to give him any space on the ball. They're going to target him for being a slower player than everyone else. And he was slower than everyone else. Like, in my opinion, if you watch the game, he was giving away, or he was taking up so much space for players to run into. There was tons of times where people like Taremi and Mohabi didn't have the sort of space to maneuver because Shojai was just standing there, just doing nothing. And I really like him as a guy. I think he's a really off the field. He does really good. A lot of, you know, on Instagram he's always posting stuff about, you know, speaking out against the government, and just all that sort of stuff. He's very, very good captain off the field, but on the field, I just don't see how he's giving the team any help. Maybe in a training ground he helps, like, a lot. I'm sure he does, but it does not mean you need to start him. It just doesn't mean that you need to start him. Like, you can start Gorizadeh, who's been playing absolutely good football for Charleroi and Belgium. We can start anyone but him. Even Ansari Fab would have been fine in this game, but it didn't work out. And I want to hear Sina's thought, because obviously you touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with everything you said earlier. I think in terms of him technically, there's no question that I think in the last 10, 15 years, as Sahan said, he's been involved in the national team. In terms of technical ability, he's up there with the very best. He had a very long-term injury. I think he was out for about 18 months while he was at Osasuna. And since then, he lost his pace. Now, football isn't just about pace. If it was, he would have retired at 26, 27. He still has ability. He's had ability for the 8-9 years. It's just that his role has changed. And like you said, Arya, his ability on the ball, I'd say he's still one of the top 10 players in the national team. With everything else, he's not. As Sahan said, he was late to challenges. He has been for the past few years because he's lost that bit of pace. He's not as agile as he used to be. So with that change in ability should come a change in role, which, and I don't mean role in the team, I mean on the pitch as well. The job that he does. And Queiroz managed that really well. Now, it's all good and well criticizing for Shojai for the player he is, but I mean, it's out of his hand. If he doesn't have the pace, it's not his fault. It's the manager's fault for putting him in that position. Like you said, he doesn't move around the pitch that much, so why not give him a role, in a part of the pitch? And if you're going to start him, have players around him who will make up for that lack of movement, rather than relying on him to make the challenges and to cover the ground. Because it would be silly. It's the manager's responsibility.
Like you're saying, Sina, just to cover your point up for anyone else who doesn't understand this, because he was played as a number 10, wasn't he? He wasn't, because Queiroz played him as like a number 6 almost, or a number 8, much more deeper on the field, like naturally, because he's getting older, he's getting slower, so he played a bit deeper. But in this game, he's playing off Osmoon almost, and you're expecting him to give Osmoon support by making runs ahead of him or making runs beyond the wingers or whatever, but he wasn't doing that, so I don't know how that's going to help him. If I
could just jump in, Arya, I think there's a clear difference between somebody having a proficient technical ability and being able to carry that out at pace. In a high, as you mentioned, a high stress situation when we're being swarmed. If you look at the second half and the first half, and especially the second half, we were being swarmed by the Iraqi midfield. We couldn't even connect 2 passes in our own half. Just because Shojai was once a very good player, maybe still technically now, it doesn't mean he can carry out anything.
But is that his fault?
At pace.
Is that his fault?
I would say that obviously he's been selected to play, so he has to play. That much is not his fault. But I just disagree with the fact that even if he's in a role on the field where he's protected, I don't think that Shojayi's positive impact on the field is enough to warrant that. And I don't think, secondly, that we have the players that are capable we don't have a player like N'Golo Kante or somebody who's capable of covering for, basically being one man down effectively in a lot of situations. And even more so, I don't think Shojayi himself is a player that we should really say, you know what, he's going to give us so much benefit offensively when we have the ball that we're willing to take this hit and make up for it in other parts of the field. He's not Pirlo. This guy is well past 30. He can't deal with the pace of the game at that high intensity. And we saw that Queiroz hasn't used him for months because that's just something that he came to the similar conclusion.
So
I think
again,
it's
so
interesting.
do you expect him when he's picked to turn around to the manager and say, actually, thank you for picking me, but I'm not going to play?
Well, that's why I'm saying that obviously once he's been picked, he can't do anything about that.
Exactly.
But I'm questioning the reason why he would ever be picked in the first place.
Exactly. We all have the same question, but it's almost silly to criticize him because he's not the player he used to be. So, it's like picking Ali Doi again right now and saying go and score goals. We had the same argument actually around 2006. People asking Doi to retire because he's not adding anything to the team. Okay, fair enough, but why is the manager picking him? Why is the manager picking a 38-year-old back then, or a 34, 35-year-old now, to be in a team where he really can't contribute? And not just to pick him to be around the camp, but to pick him to start.
Right. I think the reason that I kind of touched on was that I think it comes back to the manager not having a really good grasp of the players.
Exactly.
I think that in his mind,
I agree.
If you think about Masuda Shojayi, he's a player that, we just talked about. He's been in Team Medellin for 10, 15 years. He's played in Spain. He's was once a very good technical player, and he was hoping that in this sort of game, Shojayi could calm the team down in possession and do stuff like that. But that is just not in touch with reality. If you look at reality, he's not been able to do that for a very, very long time. And this part of me that has more question even, the technical thing is something I think we can all agree on. But in terms of the mental component of this, Shojayi has always been a player who is kind of hot-headed. Yes, he's a leader off the field, but he's countless times for Team Medellin, he's lost his cool, he's made bad fouls, he's got yellow cards, and in this game, he had already made a foul on the top of the box at minute 2. If you look at the yellow card he received, he actually lost the ball under a fair challenge from the Iraqi player, and was looking for a foul for about 30, 40 seconds, and when the ref didn't give it, he got up and his next move was to absolutely smash the Iraqi player with the ball and get himself the yellow card. That's not a leader.
Yeah,
that is not somebody who's going to calm the team down on the field in a high-pressure situation, because he just did the opposite, actually.
I think for me, just to completely end this topic, Nick, because it's getting a little bit overblown, but I think for me, if I was to pick a captain for the national team as of today, it would very much still be Ashkan Dejagah. For me, I think he's a real captain. I think he whenever he had the captain's armband, especially in the Asian Cup, I thought he led the team. And especially because he got so much criticism as well. Similar to what Shojayi is getting just now. Because he was saying, he's getting slower, he's not as good. He was still getting the same kind of criticism, but he still went out in the Asian and he still proved people wrong, which is what I want to see from a captain. Moving on, just the squad that he picked as well, very quickly, and then we'll go on to the game. And then after that, we're going to just speak about Wilmot and his future. So the first thing I want to speak about is the squad. So the squad was picked, 23 players were picked. Ehsan Haisafi got injured. Torabi replaced him. Now, one player that I want to focus on the most, in fact, two players I want to focus on the most are Golizadeh and Kaverizai. Now, these players were called up for the first time, believe it or not, under Wilmots. This is the first time they've been called up under him. good inclusions, in my opinion. They've been really, really, really immense for Charleroi in the last month. Regularly being in Team of the Week in Belgium, etc. Scoring goals, making assists. But Wils Come, who I would say probably should have started this game, didn't start the game. And Kvaratskhelia came on in the 89th minute. Sina, give me your thoughts on these two. I've not really heard your thoughts about these two players, but I know you're a big fan of Kvaratskhelia, but why did we not see them play much?
Not just Kvaratskhelia, Olizade as well. I remember when he was linked to Charleroi, we had a couple of Belgian journalists, and I said to them back then that if they go ahead and wrap this deal up, they will sell Olizade for a massive profit in 2 to 3 years. And I'm still sticking by that. He's a very talented player and a modern winger, which we haven't produced. It's very rare that Iran produces left-footed right wingers like Olizade. He's technically very good. I think his end product could improve, but again, he's got plenty of time to do it. Now, as you said, they've both been rightly called up. They should have been called up previously. But again, it goes back to the same point all of us made about the lack of knowledge of Wilmots. And I think also falls slightly on Hoshem as well, who's meant to be that sort of guidance for him. Now, with Kove, I'm not in favour of playing two strikers up front anyway, but I think he has earned an opportunity, maybe not to start against Iraq, but I think in the coming games to certainly start a game and kind of give us a different edge, because he's a different sort of player than Osman. Osman is more of a kind of poacher in the box. He comes alive, whereas Rezai, he's very good in the kind of the build-up side of the game. He can get involved with creating opportunities. And I've said this previously as well, that he'd be great if you've got goal-scoring wingers. And again, that could apply to Jahanbakhsh if he starts. Could also apply to Olizade as well. And of course, we've got Taremi on the left. But yeah, good to see both of them. I think it was almost insulting to bring on Kvaratskhelia on 90th minutes. Should have brought him on sooner. Should have brought on Olizade, definitely. He can unlock any defence for me. I remember there was a friendly against Uzbekistan a while ago. And he was the one that made the massive difference. I think it was last year or the year before.
Yeah, he played at left back. He was at left back, but he was unbelievable.
There was a game he came on.
Yeah,
I think
there was a game against Venezuela where he was
fantastic.
Yeah.
It was against Bolivia. It was against Bolivia when he started and he scored a goal. Or maybe it was Venezuela.
No, it was Venezuela. Yeah. He started and he scored a goal. He was playing on the right wing, I believe.
Yeah. The one I'm talking about was definitely against Uzbekistan, because I remember it was 0-0 and he didn't score. He got the assist.
Right.
He came on in the last 10-15 minutes. It was one of his earlier caps. So
I think it was it was on the same FIFA break that we had Uzbekistan and Venezuela.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I mean, just building off what Sina said about Kove and Olizade, I've been watching their games every week for Charleroi, and I think not only is Kvaratskhelia a good forward who can play the center forward role, but I think if you look at the qualities which Sina mentioned, he's a very hard runner. His leading of the press is fantastic. I think that Mazu, his Romanian coach, during his first stint at Charleroi, who now became the coach of Genk, who are in the Champions League, he said that Kvaratskhelia was one of the best pressers of the ball that he'd ever seen. And, he has a really good capacity for leading the press and running all game. He has a good capacity for running into space, off players through the lines, and he has a very good technique. He has a really good link-up play, vision, and good shooting from outside the box too. So he really has a lot of aspects to his game, and I actually think that we could start with him and Osman. I think if you look at Osman's career as a whole, his best moments in teams have always come when he has a very quality strike partner. And that has a lot to do with the fact that most of the teams he's played on haven't had good creative midfielders, including Team Medley. But when he's partnered with a striker, at times we've seen him have that sort of partnership with Taremi, but it's not always really easy to have that because Taremi's playing on the left. But we see in Zenit with him and Zuba, we saw in Rostov with him and Polos. So if we consider Osmun to be our best player, which I think we can agree that he is, to get the best out of him, I think he needs to have more help up front. He needs somebody to be able to get to his knockdowns. He needs somebody to be able to run through and get his knockdowns from the other side. And I think Rezai could really easily be that player for us and contribute on the defensive side. And I think that, starting Shojai, who offered none of that, as opposed to having Qolizadeh or Kaveh Rezai around Osmun and getting the best out of him, really hurt the team as well.
I think Sina gave a really good point earlier about the left-footed right winger, that we don't really produce many of them in Iran. Kaveh Rezai as well, just being a complete striker. We don't really produce a lot of them either. We have Ansari Fard, who's kind of complete, but kind of isn't at the same time. I don't know what he is.
He's more of a poacher.
It's similar. He can play as a winger as well. He has that ability, but he's not quite technically as proficient as somebody like Kaveh Rezai. But a good point by Hussein was the left-footed right winger, which is something that we've obviously Mehrdad Mohammadi is also that kind of role as well, which is it's good to see him going to Europe. But Qolizadeh is a different kind of player, man. I don't understand how he didn't start him in this game. I don't get it. I get why he played Mohebi, and I've got to say this kid is unbelievable. This kid is really, really talented, and he should not be, people shouldn't say, oh yeah, this kid's too young, shouldn't be in the national team. No, he's good. He's a good player, and he has every right to be playing in the national team, in the senior team, because if you can produce an assist like that, again, in a high pressure game away from home, you are, in my opinion, a national team player, because that shows a lot of bottle for him to go out there and produce an assist at that level, at that age. It's something really, really good, and we have to really credit this kid that he's done that. 20 years old, and he's a young player, but he will improve. If he goes to Europe, which he's already said that he wants to do, he will turn into a really good player for the national team. But one player I want to speak about is Ahmad Nurullahi, because Ahmad Nurullahi came in this game and he wouldn't have started if Haisafi wasn't injured. I don't think he would have benched Haisafi. But I want to ask you, because he scored the goal. We can't. That's a positive, and that's probably one of the only positives in the game, is that Nurullahi scored the goal in this game. But I want to ask Sina, because obviously I know you're an Esteghlal fan. I know Ali Kanemi's also been quite good. But Nurullahi's kind of been on the fringes of national team, in the last year. He didn't go to the World Cup, but he came into the squad after the World Cup. He was in the Asian Cup. He wasn't starting. He wasn't really playing as a bet. He was subbed on a few times. But for me, if I was the coach, he should be starting all the time. I think he has something much different, and he has a lot more quality than Ibrahimi, who had a really poor game against Iraq, if I say so myself. A guy who I actually like Ibrahimi, but for me he had a really poor game. And I think he's one of those guys who should slowly be phased out of the national team from starting all the time. But Nurullah, he's a really good player. I think he can really offer us something different. What do you guys think, Sino?
Yeah, you could compare it to Ali Karimi, and under Wilmots, we've been sort of playing with a two-man central midfield, and Karimi can't play that role anyway. He's not mobile enough. Nurullah offers different things. He's sort of a complete midfielder. He's almost like a younger version of Ibrahimi. I think that he can be a box-to-box midfielder. I think like he sort of was in this game. He has the ability to spread the ball around physically. He's quite good to have in midfield. So you're right. I think he'll be more of a regular starter going forward. This game and the last game against Bahrain as well, when he came on, I thought he had a good performance. With Ibrahimi, I said this before the last World Cup that He's not someone that I would want to see in midfield. I think the formation and the tactics that Queiroz was playing really suited him and kind of protected him. And I think he's got more weaknesses that are coming out, like other players. I'm sure we'll discuss, like Harsh Safid had shown in the Bahrain game as well. These players were protected by Queiroz with the way we were playing. I think he'll be useful to have, but as you said, I think going forward he'll slowly be moved out. Now, with one of the things Sahan said was to start Rezai and Osman, which is a really good idea because again, Rezai is so intelligent because he's got the technical ability, but it's the fact that his intelligence really kind of makes him stand out compared to the other strikers that we have. Now, although that's a good combination, because our midfield is really poor in terms of the quality and in terms of the numbers and the options as well, we can't afford to play with two strikers. If we want to protect ourselves going forward and play as a team, then we have to protect that midfield. We have to have a midfield that doesn't get outrun like it did against Iraq, like it sort of showed the lack of creativity that it did against Bahrain. And we're playing the two central midfielders, that's not going to work. And again, it's disappointing to say. And I think, as Sahan said, Osman does need to play with another striker. And that's why someone like Taremi in the previous system was so influential, not just for himself, but for Osman as well. Because he made those inside runs, he found the space, he worked well with Osman. So I think if Rezai is going to come into the team, he will have to have a similar role to that of Taremi on the Queiroz, rather than playing with two strikers up front. I really don't see it working, and I'm really against the idea because of how bad our midfield is and also the defensive mistakes that we have in the back four as well. That midfield needs to be stronger, and we can only do that if we're playing with a three-man midfield.
Yeah, I agree with Sina on that point, but what I will say is, we started three midfielders in this previous game. We started with Ebrahimi, Nurullahi, and Shojai.
Yes, but the shape was different. The shape
right,
wasn't...
the shape was... But what I'm saying is, it wasn't like that additional midfielder, if it's Shojai, or in the last game we were playing a 4-2-4 with Ansari Fard. So if he's going to persist with these sort of formations and these sort of personnel, then I would say Kaveh Rezai would be an instant upgrade on Ansari Fard or Shojai if he's playing in that kind of second striker false 10 role. But
where would the chances come from? So where are they going to get supplied?
Going into the midfield, the discussion about the midfield, which I'm going to get to your point right now, Sina. I would say Nurullahi is a very interesting player, as you guys mentioned. I think he has dynamism. He can get box to box. He has a good shot on him. He's physical. He has a lot of, he can put in a lot of miles. So I really like his addition. I think he can become a mainstay for Team Melli, and he's still young. And what I liked also was his growth. We saw him play in a game versus South Korea, where he was pretty good, and that was Wilmot's second game. And I think that, if we're going to be in these sort of high pressure games, Iraq game, I would rather see young players or players that haven't, been involved as much, like Nurullahi, Mohebbi, them being given the chance. Because, if they make mistakes, there's a good chance that they're going to improve from that. And they're going to be able to show themselves better in the future. And we saw that from Mohebbi, and we saw that from Nurullahi, who improved. And even though the team was kind of folding, he was able to be strong and score the goal. Now, if we're talking about how we're going to get, chances without having that additional midfielder, I think that when Qudus comes back, he is that guy. He's the number 10 for Team Melli, and I think he's going to be one of the key ways that we're going to get our chances, and he can play in that more traditional number 10 midfield role, and he'd be perfect for that. But I think, this game he was unavailable. And my tactic would have been, if we don't really have that traditional number 10, would be to, if we're going to play through the middle, which I don't know how comfortable the team is doing that, but that's something we were starting to do under Queiroz in the Asian Cup, before the Asian Cup, and even in the Japan game. We were kind of starting to really kind of play out of the back more, using Majid Hosseini's passing range, Pur Ali Ganji's passing range, Ebrahimi's passing range, and getting the ball to sort of ball carriers. Haj Safi was one of the cases, but I think Nurullahi's a better example of that, and Qolizadeh, and getting the ball to those players, and with them as the driving force advancing up the field into the positions where we could get Osmun and Taremi to combine. Now, if we're not confident doing that right now with the pressure the team is under, we could go long again if we need to create chances. I think if we're going long, Majid Hosseini is probably our best passer out of the back, and he needs to be used. But the thing is, when you go long to Osmun, and this is why I'd include Kaveh Rezai Sina, is because when you go long to Osmun, the balls need to be accurate, but also there needs to be people under and around him connecting to the second ball. That's the key. Or else what's going to happen is what we saw against Iraq. Random long balls going, nowhere near him, nobody's around him, and it's really hard to connect and build an offensive play like that. But if Kaveh Rezai, Taremi, Qolizadeh are all positioned close to him, and Nurullahi's coming also from the back and able to attach, then you can get to those knockdowns, and from there, in a higher position of the field, you can build your attacks.
You mentioned Qudus, so Qudus playing number 10, you want to play him behind Rezai and Osmun?
No, so I think if Qudus is available, my team would be, just the midfield setup would be Ebrahimi, Nurullahi, Qudus, and then Taremi, Osmun, and Qolizadeh. So I wouldn't have Rezai in that case, but I think obviously he would be somebody you would be rotating in frequently. You'd be giving minutes to. If you need another goal, you go to the 2 forward formation. But in this game, with Qudus not available, I think he would have been a good option to start in that role that Shojai was playing.
Sina, have you got something to add?
In this game, it was shambolic. With two strikers as well, playing out the back, and you mentioned Hosseini and the random balls going forward, and you're right. The reason for that is he's insisting on playing out from the back, but you can't do it with 2 strikers again because you're short in numbers in midfield.
Yeah,
so there was these 2. You had your back 4, and you have 2 central midfielders who you want to get the ball to from the back 4. Now, what did Iraq do? Iraq started with 2 strikers, and all they did was close out the passing channels to midfield. So then what did you do? And he wasn't really playing with wingers. He was almost like attacking midfielders who push a bit wide. So the ball goes out to the fullback, comes back to central defense, Hosseini or Kanoni, and then it goes up to Osmun. Again, it was a mess. It was almost embarrassing. And almost if you want to go and play long, and I agree with what Sahan said. So Osmun's flick-ons do definitely work. You need players to run off him behind the defence, and you also need your midfielders to pick up the second balls. But again, that's not really attacking football because you're trying to attack in 2 or 3 passes to create a chance, and I'd say more than 50% of the time that ball will come back towards your own half. So it's kind of, again, in a perfect world we would play like that. But I don't think it'll get to a point where Wilmots would, because he's contradicting what he's saying. He wants to play possession football. He wants to build from the back. He wants to have 60% possession, 50-60% possession, and you can't do that with 2 strikers. It's impossible to do it with 2 strikers because you always need a holding midfielder, like Izzatullahi was, like Nikunom was when he was playing, to come and collect the ball, but at the same time be that reference point for the team. And we're not doing that. The wingers, again, you need your wingers to be as wide as possible, stretch the pitch, bring your midfield out. We're not doing that. We're playing so narrow. Again, it's honestly embarrassing.
But, the thing is, if saying that I want to play attacking football is one thing, but we can't deal with what Wilmot says. We have to deal with the reality. The reality is on the field, we're not playing attacking football. We're not dominating possession at all. So if that's the case, it's apparent that we're not able to do that for the personnel reasons or whatever other reasons that we've talked about. So if we can't do that and we're going long anyways, because in this game we were going long. That's what was happening. We were getting the ball either to the fullback or the center back, and they were just lumping up balls that weren't even close to anybody. If that's what's going to be happening and the other team is going to force us to be playing long, then we have to have a plan for that. And I think that a good plan for that is to say, okay, we're going to play long. We're going to hit Osmoon. We're going to hit Taremi. They're really good in the 50-50s in the air. So is Kaveh Rezai. And with Kaveh Rezai's intelligence, Golizade's speed, those players can attach under and get the ball in those areas. But we had a situation where we weren't playing possession football. We were playing long to nobody. And as you saw, we didn't even create one chance in the whole of the second half. So that's pretty much what happened. Saying you want to play attacking football is one thing, but we can't do it on the field.
That's exactly the point. So the most concerning thing about the result, and I agree with everything Sahan said, is not the fact that we lost. We lose football games. We lost to Japan. If we have listeners who didn't watch Iran before 2009, this is what used to happen on a regular basis. So losing happens. I don't have a problem with that. But the issue is everything that Sahan mentioned happened in the Bahrain game. So this guy's come out and did the exact same thing again in a more important game.
We didn't learn from anything or make any adjustments.
Exactly.
That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say because look, he tried to make an adjustment. Let's get this. He tried to make an adjustment. He put in the Bahrain game he played a 4-4-2. And he played Ansari Fard and Osman up front together. In this game, specifically, he played Shojai off Osman. That was his change. That was his idea. Let's play a 4-2-3-1. Let's change the formation slightly. Let's make Osman a lone striker, have a midfielder off him, Shojai, and let's try and make a bit of create. It didn't work because it can't work. It doesn't make any difference. You can literally play two players behind Osmoon in that similar formation. It doesn't work. It won't make any difference to how much creativity we will create in the final third. Because like Sina's saying, if he wants to play out the back, if he wants to play build up play from the defence to the midfield to the strikers, you have to have an extra deep lying midfielder. For example, look at the way Queiroz set up his team. He had very much 5 in midfield, but he had a 5 in midfield that were pretty deep, and especially the 3 in the middle were very, very deep, very, very involved with the centre backs. If you look at the gap between, especially Ibrahimi sat quite deep in this game, but Nurullahi and Shojai were literally in the other half of the pitch most of the time. They never really came anywhere near the
spacing. The spacing and positioning was ridiculously off.
Yeah, it was bad. And if you look at it from a perspective of like you're saying, San, Canon Izadegan literally played 15 long balls in this game because he had to. That was the only thing he could do. And even if he wants to play it from the back, eventually he will have to resort to playing a long ball. And my issue with that is that it shows you that Wilmots had no plan B. Because if you're going to play out from the back, normally the plan B is going to be a long ball. That's normally so you can clear it and you can do it again if it comes back to you. He didn't even put Majid Hosseini, the guy who's good at long balls, which is just ridiculous. If you got a plan B, you would at least put a player who's good at doing the plan B. Do you know what I mean? Mate, you literally don't know what your players are good at. You put Canoni, and all he did was clear the ball.
One of the biggest things that he's actually come out, and again, I think he's got good intentions, but it's not going to work, is the fact that he's come out and he's given more freedom to the players in their decision making, in the way they want to play. But this is in Europe. None of these players and the footballing education that they've had have been taught how to make correct decisions. And it's something we have to accept. Our players, Iranian players, don't have great decision making, which is why players like Dejoya, even though they've lost that pace, and he probably has less pace than Shojai, but when he plays, he's just almost on a different world because he's really smart. His decision making is correct. The only two plays that I've watched in my lifetime, and I thought these guys, in terms of their movements, in terms of the constant decisions they make on the pitch, are really good, is Mahdavikia and Nekuna. Those are the only two. This thing that he's come out and given more freedoms to the players on the pitch, this will not work, whether it's on the ball, off the ball, or in terms of leadership as well. We talked about leadership, but we didn't have any of these issues on the Queiroz. Why? Because he was the leader. He made the decisions for the players. He took that choice away from them. The players almost became tools on the pitch, which is why when you take out players like Jalal Hosseini, for example, and you bring on a young Majid Hosseini with no experience, it would still work. Why? Because it's a system, and the players are simply tools. You don't rely on the players to make decisions on their own. So
just adding. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead. Sam.
No, it's fine.
Adding to that is, something we talked about was Ebrahimi, and how you guys maybe think that ideally he wouldn't be starting, but in my opinion, Ebrahimi is still probably given Izzatullahi being just fat, overweight and out of form. He can't even make the open bench. He's not a viable option at this time. But Ebrahimi is a player who, if we just want to take European performances right now into account, he joined a team that was pretty much dead last in the table in Belgium. And in the span of 6 games, his inclusion was pretty much the only change that they made. The team is now comfortably mid-table. He's been in the team of the week once or twice. He's put in great performances against Champions League caliber opponents. So what I would say is, building on what you were saying, Sina, about the system, if Ebrahimi is able to do that 5 days ago, in Belgium, and he was able to do that under Queiroz, where he was actually the person who was our link out of the back, because, in the span of after the World Cup to the Asian Cup and through the Asian Cup, we were playing in a system that was more focused on playing out of the back. We were using Ebrahimi as the link, and he was proficient enough to be very effective in that role. If you look at his passing percentages from the Asian Cup, it was always in the 80s, high 80s, 90s. But in this system, it's incredible that he looks a shadow of the player that he was just 1 week ago, And I think that a lot of the players are experiencing that. We're seeing a lot of players who don't look anything like their usual selves for Team Melli in the past or for their club teams. Osmoon, Taremi, Ebrahimi, even Majid Hosseini, Milad Mohammadi. Milad Mohammadi was just man of the match one of the best players against Standard Liège just a few days ago. And he comes into this game and he's getting exposed on the left-hand side every single time. So clearly the players didn't turn bad in the space of like a week, in the space of a few days. Something about the system has confused them so much, their positioning is so off that they're just not able to perform with any consistency.
I want to add something though, because you're saying system, and I absolutely agree that Wilmot is in the wrong with his coaching and his system. But coming back to Sina, what he was saying about Hashemian, I have a real issue with. I've said it on Twitter a few times as well. I've got a real issue with Hashemian's job at the moment, and I was having a discussion with Babak on this as well. How can a coach call up a player who isn't even first choice for his club? How does that make any sense? How does Mohamed Naderi get called up when he's not even a first choice left back for Persepolis? That literally makes no sense. That's like literally the worst thing you can ever do. I'm not saying Mohamed Ansari should get called up. Mohamed Ansari is not a great player either, but he's first choice left back for whenever whenever Jalal Hosseini, Khalid Zadeh, and Mohamed and Mehdi Shiri are fit, he plays left back. Not Mohamed. I don't get how he calls.
Well, I mean, I guess Naderi is a younger player with some potential, and
I get that.
He's a reserve left back.
I get that, but then
the thing about Hashemian is it seems that, I mean, obviously we don't know what he's telling Wilmots behind the scenes. Maybe he's telling him a lot of the things that we're saying, and Wilmots is not paying attention. But I think the problem with Hashemian is a lack of experience in these sort of managerial roles. I mean, this is the first assistant coach job of a high-profile team that he's had. I think he managed some like 6th or 7th division German teams, but that's it. So I'm kind of, a little apprehensive and worried about his ability to really put an imprint on the team as the assistant coach and really be forceful in the way he's expressing his opinions to Wilmots.
Because it's a shame, because there's a lot of players who aren't getting called up.
It's a dynamic where Hashemian is almost kind of like a lame duck. What can he really do? Yeah. And adding to that, we know that Hashemian's personality has always been more understated, calmer guy. He's not, he has all of his UEFA qualifications and everything, but I don't think he's the guy who's going to go and tell Wilmots, you know what, this is wrong and we can't do this. We're going to lose again. I'm not sure if he's that guy. I don't know how many assistant coaches would be that guy anyways. But so the Hashemian role is kind of just like we have this guy with a good background who's sitting there, and I don't really think he's doing much.
Yeah, and if I'm honest, and I've spoken to a few journalists in Belgium about this, because from what I've heard, Wilmots isn't really a coach, and from what I've seen, and especially the training videos, if you look at the training videos, and it might not show a lot, but specifically in those videos,
I'm so glad you picked up on
Hashemian literally takes all the sessions, doesn't he? He takes all the training sessions, and I guarantee you, Wilmots sits on his bum and literally picks Shojoy to start. I guarantee you that's what he does. I'm not even joking.
It's absolutely fine if you're a manager like that. It's not an issue.
No, it's fine.
There's a lot of
Listen, I'll give you an example. Very quickly, Sina. Go on. I was speaking to so I'm doing my course just now for coaching. I was speaking to Andy Halliday, who's playing for Rangers, and he was telling me Steven Gerrard, who's the coach of Rangers, that he doesn't coach. He doesn't do any of the coaching sessions. He literally leaves his assistant to take them. But Gerrard, as a manager, he does what he needs to do. Before the training sessions, he'll speak to his coaches. He'll tell them what he wants done, and they'll do it for him. And then he'll pick the team on a weekend. That's what Gerrard's role is in the team. But that's not what Wilmots should be doing. It's not how it works. You can't. Iranian players don't have that capacity, like you were saying.
No, it's not an issue. So with Gerrard, you're right, and he said it himself actually in one of the interviews. He's took Michael Beale from Liverpool, and he's become his assistant, and it's Michael Beale who does all the training sessions. With Wilmots, it'd be absolutely fine if it's the coaches who are doing the coaching. It's not an issue. A lot of managers do it at international level and at club level. But the problem is, has he actually chosen Hashemian to do that for him, or was he a choice that was kind of imposed on him from the federation? That's one question. And also, you picked up on the training, and I encourage everyone who's listening to this to go and actually watch some of the training sessions that he's put out. It's, again, I think it's the third or fourth time I've said embarrassing. It is embarrassing. What he's kind of coaching these players is exactly what you would teach an under-7s team when you're kind of coaching them indoors football, futsal. It's close control, very static. You're an international manager. This is an international football team. Either he doesn't think the players are that good, or the level of the training is ridiculously poor.
How long were these training videos? I mean, I know a lot of times teams release videos of training.
To be honest,
there was one I watched.
Listen, Arya, it can be 10 seconds. I could not care less. It can only be 10. Maybe they trained for 6 hours, and that was just a 10 seconds. He did that drill. I could not care less. That 10-second drill is embarrassing what he did, and I don't even know what to call it or how to describe it. I will put the video on,
and all that,
on Twitter. It's not, to be honest, it's not even the races. It's the fact that it's a drill with the ball, but it's all about close control, trying to get the ball to the other side. Right.
Look,
it's ridiculous.
Listen, we're not the national team coaches, so we can't. We
could have just been a warm up.
Me and Sina both coach, so we understand like what it's like coaching kids, what it's like coaching adults. But it's not the same thing coaching the national team of a country. I guarantee you when Kairos was coaching these national team players, that he was literally closing off all media for especially for his main stuff. For his shaping drills, for his tactical phase of play, stuff. That sort of stuff where you expect to see from a manager, like the manager has to take that. I guarantee you Queiroz was doing every single coaching session for the national team. He was that committed. But I agree with like, yes, he doesn't need to take it. But in my opinion, the Iranian national team, I would like to see a coach come in who is prepared to do the graft, because that's what the Iranian players are going to be used to as well with Queiroz.
Also, it's about what's going to inspire the players.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's another thing.
We've talked a lot about the positioning on the field totally off, the tactic selection totally off, the lack of plan B non-existent. But something we also haven't mentioned is the fact that they looked in what was a huge game, and also versus Bahrain, but it's interesting that it repeated twice. They looked so uninspired. The same team that played with so much determination in all of World Cup qualifying, in all of the World Cup games, in the Asian Cup games, in every friendly that Queiroz put together, that the Federation put together. The players, I think we could criticize Iranian players for various things, but one thing I would never criticize this group of Team Medvedev is not giving enough effort and not playing with enough energy. The energy and the effort was always there. But in these last two games, it hasn't been there. The Bahraini team looked like they wanted it a lot more than us. Maybe the weather had some stuff to do with that, but okay, next chance. Iraq game, again, the Iraqi players looked like they wanted 10 times more than us. And when you combine that with the players being confused about the tactical setup, not knowing what the plan B is, then the recipe is disaster. 2 back-to-back losses, and now we're, in danger of not qualifying.
So I'm going to come up to the Twitter questions, and basically all of them being the same question. But before we do that, I'm going to quickly just recap the game. So the game ended 2-1 to Iraq. The goal that they scored, the first goal, came from Mohamed Ali, who came from a bum. The ball, it was a cross into the box. Ibrahimi tried to play it out from the back. He messed it up, and then Mohamed Ali scored the goal. And then the next goal we scored from a great play from Mohebi. Noor Lighty scored. And then the last goal, it was a 90th minute goal. Everyone switched off. Mohamed Naderi's marking was not tight enough, not aggressive enough, and the goal went in. Now, that sort of recaps the match, but the Twitter questions, basically all the questions that we got on Twitter were, is Wilmots going to get sacked? Now, officially, from what I've heard from Iranian media, is that Wilmots has been given an ultimatum that if he doesn't win the next 2 games against Cambodia and Hong Kong in March, then he will be sacked. That is what they've told him, from what I've heard. Now, that's the official decision, but should he be sacked is the question I'm going to ask you two. Should he have been sacked after this game? Just go with Sina.
I would say.
San.
Should I go? Okay.
No, you go.
Yeah, okay. In my opinion, he should be sacked because we've had now a few games. They've been disastrous losses, and the team is showing no signs that I would stick to and say, well, this is something that definitely he's been trying to improve. We can see it improving. In the next games, we'll get there. He's a guy who just showed up, 3 days before the game. The player selection is totally off. And, our World Cup qualification is hanging by a thread. We have to win every single remaining game. And if we don't, there's not going to be a meaningful Team Medley game for the next 5 years. We're not going to be going to World Cup qualification. We're not going to be going to World Cup, and we won't be going to the Asian Cup either, because the root of that is that you have to first qualify for the next stage. But I think the issue is that he won't be getting fired because the federation is kind of hamstrung, where if you fire him, you have to pay him, at least not, if you're not going to pay him in full, you have to figure out a compensation package, and then you have to pay for a new coach too. So I think right now is pretty much, we're going to have to wait and see and hope that the next 2 games versus Hong Kong and Cambodia get some confidence back to the players. And then at home, at least with the quality of the players, when everyone is available, hopefully by then Jahanbakhsh and Qudus are back and ready to be selected, then hopefully the quality of the players takes over and we're able to get to the next round. But in my opinion, he would be gone, and if he wasn't going to be gone if we think he can get us through this phase, then he would definitely be gone before, in preparation for the main round of World Cup qualifying.
Yes, you know.
I agree. I think my biggest issue is the fact that, as I said earlier, we made a lot of mistakes in Bahrain game and a month on, and we made the exact same mistakes again in the Iraq game from the beginning to the end. And as I said, it's not necessarily the loss itself, but the fact that we don't seem to learn. There's no adjustments. There's no reaction in the game. So it's been disappointing to watch them in these last two games, and I don't think things are going to change going forward. I mean, we had an episode after he was appointed, and I think almost all of us said, look, this guy is not right. And my personal problem from the beginning was the fact that this guy is on a contract in excess of $2 million a year. It's, again, from a country that has a lot of issues from an economical stance, to pay this guy $2 million who turns up 3 or 4 days late, and he lets the players go the day the game finishes. He didn't even kind of have just have the training. I understand that it's not a friendly, but again, you don't know the players. This is an opportunity for you to spend another week with them, learn more about the players. Kind of brainstorm, see what could you have done about
Queiroz
that game.
did that frequently.
It's really disappointing. Queiroz did that frequently.
That's very disappointing.
Queiroz came a day before the training session. You're absolutely right, Sahan. But you know what the difference was? As I said it the very first thing of this episode, Oceana Cruz, Makar Janyan and Alexander Lopez were in Iran on a regular basis, watching the players, meeting the players, and sending reports to Queiroz. It's not about just Wilmot, it's about his coaching staff as well. Hashimian is the only one who's in Iraq. So it's about the FIFA day.
Yeah, if we have a FIFA day and there's no friendly, I mean, the federation, we know we have financial problems. Okay, there's no friendly. But you still have a day with these players. The Legionnaires are all there. Queiroz always took the opportunity for the extra days to work with the players, to talk about the tactical setups, to extract something from that valuable time. This is a national.
I think that's what he meant. I think that's what he meant.
Yeah,
we don't have a lot of time with our players. You know what I mean?
No,
Just
I agree.
a few random
that's
breaks.
Exactly what I was saying. I agree.
We have to use it.
So again, especially for a new manager coming in, and it's not just about Wilmot. If another manager comes in, it's the exact same scenario again. We won't have friendlies in every FIFA day. So use the opportunity to kind of communicate with your players, see what they're like. You might not get on with 2 or 3 players, so at least you'll know from now going forward. It's really ridiculous. From what I heard, and this is after he was appointed, that there was a lot of clauses in his contract. There was a few ridiculous ones, like he can't go and give interviews against the federation, against the sports ministry. He can't do a lot of other things that Queiroz kind of had problems with. About the kits, about the kind of the supplies that the national team has. He can't complain about them. And from what I heard, he had a clause in his contract that allowed the federation to get rid of him without paying all of his contract, basically. So I don't know if that's in effect from the beginning until the end of his contract,
like a break clause,
or if it's something that can be kind of, an option can be taken next year. If it is, then I think they should just get rid and bring someone else. And you can bring other people, I'd say 3 or 4 times managers better than him, with half of his pay. So I don't think he'll be sacked until, I'd say, maybe next summer. But they should start preparing for his eventual departure.
I really want to say, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude because Mark Wilmots was a really good player back in the day. If you don't know, he was a really good player for Belgium, so you can't disrespect the man. But he is not a coach. Iran needs a coach. That's what they need. They need real lover of football, someone who is educates themselves, who loves the game, who reads about the game. Queiroz was a scholar. He loved football. He read about it. He was always he was working with Alex Ferguson, for goodness sake. This guy was a lover he loved football. I don't know if Wilmots has that same love for the game. And that's what Iran really need. And it's hard to find that, obviously, but we need somebody who really cares and loves the game so much that he can love our players, or she can love our players, because this is not a nation that has real, our coaches we're always good players, Hashim Yan's a good player, Matabika a good player, but they're not some people who read into the game so much that you're like, wow, this guy can go and coach Barcelona. Do you know what I mean? But Queiroz could. Do you know what I mean? That's the difference. We need somebody who really loves the game. And Wilmots, for me, doesn't.
Yeah. I think Queiroz was something, just to finish up, I think he was something special for our football, and probably too good for our level too. But at the very least, we need somebody who's going to be able to, as you said, care and inspire the players, and put in the extra effort for this team, because the players feed off that. And I think particularly Iranian players who are emotional, especially, they feed off that. And when Queiroz was giving them that energy and that love, they were able to respond with performances on the field. But if something feels kind of, very half effort and not consistent, it's going to translate to a lack of energy on the field, and we're seeing that.
I want to just add one thing, and this is just from my personal experience as a coach. This will be the last point. We'll finish after this. But if you look at the way Wilmots is, his demeanor on the pitch on the sideline, it's very different to what Queiroz was like. And I'm not trying to compare the two. It's different. You can't compare them. But it doesn't help when a coach is clapping when someone makes a mistake. It doesn't help. I know people think that helps. It doesn't help. It does not help a professional footballer that you can, when he claps and he gives a thumbs up and he smiles, that does not help. And that's not, the players don't want that. The players do not want to be treated in that way, where they feel like they're being, they feel like they're not as good. It doesn't help. And I don't think that he understands that yet. And I think he has to understand the mentality of an Iranian footballer, of a player who plays at a decent level, like Mohammadi or whatever. And if he can't get that across, he has to be sacked, because he will never get the changing room in his favour. It will never happen, because people don't want a motivator. For me, he's a motivator. He's not a coach. And people don't want that. And especially the fact that he speaks in French doesn't help either. He doesn't speak English, doesn't really help, and I don't think that it's going to be a good thing in the future if you get a French motivator, a French speaking motivator in the changing room. It doesn't help. So he has to go, in my opinion.
Adia Queiroz was the biggest motivator.
No, I'm saying he was, but he was also a coach. That's the difference. He did it in a way where he understood his players. He was a motivator, but he did it with psychology. There was sports psychology was applied.
If Wilmots was motivating them, that would at least be a positive. No, but I don't think he's motivating them either.
Yeah, but the other point I just made is he speaks French. Queiroz spoke English. That's the difference, man. If you speak French and you motivate a guy who doesn't understand French, it doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? So, anyway, we'll wrap up there. I think that the next podcast we do, it won't be for a little while, because obviously there's no national team games, but we might do a podcast in maybe in a month or so, maybe even before that, in regards to possible Iranian league matches, or just depending on what happens with Iranian football. And maybe if Wilmots does get sacked, we'll make a podcast on that. But for now, we'll let you guys listen to the other podcasts that we've made in the past. But make sure you follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, and then like us on Facebook. So we need to do more on Facebook as well, so we'll try and get that going. But I appreciate Sand coming on. really did us a good favour to come on, and Sina as well, as always. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, this is Kat, and you're listening to Gol Bezan, and I hope you continue listening to their amazing podcast. Thank you all for the support. Love you, Gol Bezan.